There was a body of a fairly large person once found in the woods, and they were quickly killed, and there was nothing extremely offbeat about the scene, except he had half of his pointer, ring and pinky missing from his left hand, and no one could find the missing fingers, and they never found any clues. A few weeks later, another body was found. Another man who was a bit smaller than the previous guy, but the same situation, killed quickly, and 3 fingers all missing from the left hand, and still no clues. A few more weeks went by, and this time it was a woman who was found. Smaller than the second victim, but still the same fingers missing from the same hand. And this went on for a while, with the victims getting smaller and smaller, until it was kids' bodies being found. One teenager body though, only had the ring finger and the pinky finger removed. The police actually found fingerprints at the crime scene, and they found that it matched the prints from a theft record from the previous victim. The guy telling the story then told the kids that the killer was searching to replace his fingers, and thus far had yet to see if the fingers of children their age would fit. He then took off his glove, showing he had a scarred pointer finger and was missing half his ring and pinky finger, and then lunged at the kids while screaming. He later told the kids that he lost 2 in a work accident, and doctors were able to save his very mangled pointed finger. He told this story every year at camp. A man and his wife travelled west in hopes of either striking it rich with gold, or at worst, finding a nice plot of land to settle down on and farm, manifest destiny and whatnot. A few months into their journey, they came across just the spot, a beautiful plot of land to make their new home, and winter would be coming in a couple of months, so they hastily build a shack and figure they'll hunker down there for the winter, and then they'll build a more established house in a few months when the weather is more permitting. They didn't worry, as the area is teeming with wildlife for hunting and trapping, so they figure that they'll be set for food. A couple of months go by and the winter is bitter, cold and unrelenting, and they've finished off the last of their food stash, and they haven't seen so much as a squirrel in weeks, and they're both slowly starving and freezing to death as they huddle in their shack day after day with no end in sight. The man's wife is delirious with hunger, and fearing that they will soon be dead, he decides to go for a hunt. So he musters up the energy, he bundles up and heads out, determined to stay out as long as it takes to find them both some food. And a couple of days pass as the man takes shelter under impromptu stick shelters, keeping warm with a campfire in the night time and hunting during the day. And nearly frozen to death, mercifully, the man spots a beautifully plump rabbit several yards away. And he takes aim with his musket, and bang, it's a perfect shot. And with a newfound energy, the man runs home giddy to finally feast with his wife. But what he doesn't know is that while he was gone, his wife had discovered some tasty flesh of her own, and literally, the hunger had driven her insane, causing her to believe that her now frost-bitten fingertips were lady finger cookies. She started off with a few nibbles here and there, slowly pulling the flesh away from her bones, and after just a couple of hours, both hands were nothing but bone. So she worked her way up to her arms and then to the elbow. The feeling of something in her stomach just continued to drive her further, until she had chewed away at every last bit of skin that she could reach, culminating in chewing off her own lips. The husband approached the shack with his now frozen kill when he got a rather uneasy feeling. Fearing the worst, he steps up to the door and slowly opens it, expecting to see his wife's corpse shriveled on the floor. But instead what he finds is even worse. This zombie-like creature, with exposed teeth and bones writhing on the floor at the sight of him, chomping its jaws with an insatiable hunger. One year, a group of us went camping in Kearney, Ontario, where we would always go camping. And whenever we go, we always form our tents in a big circle with the fire pit in the middle of us. And we'd been drinking, smoking a few, and a few of us were tripping on shrooms. And the first night that we were there, this guy randomly walks into our circle and introduces himself that he was in the military and decided to take some vacation to camp out. He asked if he could join our fire as it was getting late and he didn't buy any firewood. So being the friendly people that we are, we let him join our fire. He even pitched in some money for the firewood. The night went on and we were all having a good time, and one by one our group started to head off to bed, me being either the second or third. I remember waking up to the sound of someone talking and the fire being started. It was around 4 a.m, so I peeped out of my tent and I saw the random guy just sitting by the log fire talking to himself. At this point I was still tripping. I thought to myself, I'm not really in any condition to deal with this, and chalked it up to me just tripping out. I wake up the next day and everyone is still alive, thankfully, and the fire is smouldering. We look to the next campsite where the random was staying, and it was spotless. No garbage, no tracks in the trail around the site, nothing. We all started talking about him, just to be sure we all did in fact see him. And through talking, we managed to figure out that he must not have slept at all, as the last two in our group passed out just after 3:30 a.m. And the first person got up just after 6 a.m. and noticed he was gone. So the rest of the camping trip went well and we all went home. And then fast forward maybe 4 or 5 years, I flip on the news and there is a picture of someone I swear I could recognise. And he was arrested for a bunch of crimes, including rape and murder. And guess who it was? It was just a random guy who joined our fire. I don't know why I remembered his face, but I guess it was just a weird situation where my brain right-clicked and saved as a JPEG in my brain. Now, I have no way of proving if it was the same guy, and we didn't take any pictures of the random, but the picture just jump-started my memory and made me instantly remember the weird random fire joiner. Either that, or they looked identical to the same person. Either way, it was creepy. One day, my neighbour walked over into my backyard while I was still in my garden. He looked dishevelled and was wearing pyjamas. And when I stood up, I noticed his eyes were sunken in and it looked like as if he had lost a lot of weight. I tried to crack a joke about how this would be a great day to go down to the beach if it were not for the weather being so cold. But the joke fell flat. A week later, I bump into his wife at the post office, and she was in line in front of me, mailing about a dozen packages. I asked if her husband was feeling better because he looked a bit under the weather last week when he was in my backyard. She tells me I must have been mistaken. He passed away over a month ago from cancer, and the packages that she was mailing were his action figure toy collection she sold online. I was speechless. Was I crazy? Maybe I did misjudge the weekend I thought I saw him, and then I really thought hard. I didn't remember him saying anything to me. I did remember telling him the joke and it falling flat, and I assumed I wasn't funny as to why he didn't laugh. Or maybe he couldn't because it may have just been his spirit. And when I returned home from the post office, I immediately started telling my wife about our neighbour. Before I could get out that he had passed away from cancer, she says, "Oh yeah, I saw you guys talking last weekend." And then I tell her about seeing his wife at the post office and being told about his passing. So we go to our security camera and play back the video from the week before. It's clear in the video that I do stand up, and it's obvious that I'm acknowledging the presence of someone, and I do have a brief conversation. And then I go back to tending my garden. But on the video, the entire time, I was the only person in my backyard.